everybody. So for this video, I wanted to kind of just zero in on doing the shadow glaze in color on skin. So very specific. So I just finished doing a multi-video series kind of on glazing color, and you can check that out in my videos playlist. And I broke down the color steps in the Mische technique. You kind of do a general color glaze over the whole thing. You do a shadow glaze, a highlight glaze, a harmonizing glaze, and then a final highlight. And, you know, like anything, they're like guidelines. They're not like hard rules or anything, you know. So like in Pirates of the Caribbean, where, you know, the pirates code, it's like they're more like guidelines, you know, than rules, right? It's like that. So, you know, you don't have to kind of like break it into steps, but it's a helpful way to kind of think through the process. So it's not just an overwhelming mush. And, I'm going to just give an example here on what that looks like, just the shadow glaze on skin. So you can see I've got, this is the painting I'm working on right now. I've been working on it for way too long, in my opinion, but we're still here. And I have one, you know, basic color glaze over the whole thing, and I've started to go in with the shadows. So you can kind of see where there's shadows in this, right? Like their hair is good, like her jacket is partly there, you know, and, you know, I did some of the clouds already, but there's kind of a lot left to do on some level. And so I thought it would be helpful to see what it looks like from the first color glaze over the skin to when you do the shadow, and like how that looks, because I've had a couple students that when they get to this place, they're like, no, you know, and it looks weird. It looks super weird when you do it, but that's why that's just wanting you to see what it looks like so you can trust the process when you're doing yourself. So that's exciting. So also I want to announce that I'm going to be having a online class in the fall, starting in October. And registration opens in August. Right there, there's your info. So this will be next to my Substack. This will be the first place I announce it. And so this is going to be a deep dive where we're going to paint a painting from beginning to end. I will in my demo, and then you can kind of go at your own pace, of course. We will have critique, and in each of the steps, we will go from, you know, a blank canvas to a finished painting through the course of the 4 weeks. And I will be showing you how to, as the name suggests, fantastical beasts. I will be showing you how to create a fantasy image. This is going to be both a fantastical creature and a human being in a fantasy setting. So you'll kind of get all of it, right? And so we'll talk about how to get your references, lighting, how to kind of put your image together so that it looks realistic, and believable, you know, realistic and believable, right? Because even if you're painting mythological, fantastical, or visionary stuff, it's just that much better when these things are believable to the eye, you know, like, and we'll go into what all of that means in the class. So if you're interested, subscribe so you get updates. And stay tuned. I will be talking about this a little bit more in an upcoming video. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that I know some of you have been asking, when am I ever going to do a class? Finally, I'm doing one. It's hard to get the world to coalesce in certain ways so that I can actually do an online class. And yeah, very excited for that. So, without further ado, let's jump into the video and paint some skin on my Persephone and Demeter. So here I am starting to put on the very first shadow glaze over my basic Caucasian skin tone that I have laid on there. Now, you would do exactly the same kind of process no matter what color skin you're painting. So you have a base color on there and then you go in with a shadow. And so the first few marks you're going to put on there, as you can see, are going to look bizarre. And you're going to really think you've messed up. But I just encourage you to watch through to the end of the video to see what it actually looks like once this layer is finished. And then you shall notice that you have not messed up and it looks fine. But it definitely looks very strange when you first start. So that's the first thing I really want to say is that it's going to look funny. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel like all that hard work you did just went out the window, but don't worry, that is not so. You just kind of have to go through this layer and this process, and once you're done, it's going to be really, really nice. And especially the next thing that comes after this is the highlight layer. And once you put that on there, it'll just kind of really blend everything together, and it will look just like skin. So I am using a burnt umber here. And I don't always, it's not that I don't use the same color mixtures every time I do skin. It depends on the painting. It depends on the lighting. It depends on a lot of things. So for this one, I found that a burnt umber kind of in this first glaze is the right color. So I wanted something that was kind of warm, dark but warm. And that's a good start here for me. And I did this shadow glaze that we are doing in this video over 3 days. So you'll see why in a minute, because there are 3 different kind of layers to this glaze. And I would recommend, instead of trying to do it all at once, which you can do, you just kind of, layer those glazes on wet, really. And that's a whole kind of technique in and of itself. I would encourage you to kind of let it dry in between and, see what it looks like and then kind of go from there. I find I get better results that way, and it just feels better when I do it that way. So you can kind of see how it's already starting to take shape. I'm always looking at my reference. Always, always, always when you're painting like this, look at your reference. Always referring back to it. It's literally right next to me. I either print it out or I use an iPad. Honestly, I more often use an iPad than I print it out just because of convenience. But that iPad is literally like just inches away from what I am painting. And so I can just glance at it every so many moments and make sure that what I'm doing is correct. Because, again, you're not reinventing the wheel here. You can kind of see where the shadows are already underneath just in that first color glaze anyway, right? That's what you spent the entire first part of this painting doing, is setting it up for success when you put the color on it. You did not have all the blood, sweat, and tears in the first 3 parts of the underpainting for nothing, right? So you're really just going over what you've mapped out before to do. It just, I think, has a tendency to feel really new and vulnerable when you're kind of working in the color. But you've already done this, so, keep going. And so I'm just laying this burnt umber in all of my shadow. And even if when I'm looking at my reference, this isn't necessarily the color that I'm seeing in that shadow, because I am glazing actually 3 colors in this instant more or less over top of this. It's the combined color that I'm wanting to achieve. And honestly, that's a big thing in the Mische technique. You start seeing color as layering of many colors, not just, when you're working wet on wet or alla prima, like, normal oil painting, you see a color, you mix it, and you paint it on there, right? Like simple. When you work with the Mische technique for a length of time, color isn't one thing. It is many things layered on top of itself, on top of each other, rather. And so you can, your brain starts thinking with color in this multi-layer process, which is really cool, actually. And this isn't something that I trained myself to do necessarily, but over the years, it's just become how I think, when I'm painting this way. I mean, of course, when I'm painting alla prima, I just mix the color and do it. But, there's something when I'm working with glazes in this way, I start, I'm thinking several steps down the line when I'm doing color. And so the color that you see right away isn't the color that I'm wanting to achieve. It's the color, several steps down the road. And so shadow is such an interesting thing because of that, right? And shadow is never just gray. It's never, just brown or whatever, right? And never just black. It's very, very multichromal, if you will. And so we're trying to physically mimic that kind of, multichromatic shade that nature actually does with light. And because these are translucent glazes, they can do that. And, so you're still getting all the color from your underpainting coming through, right? You're still getting the color from the base layer of glaze color you put on over your underpainting coming through. And now you've added this whole other color on top of that. So you're now working literally with 4 different colors underneath this color already, right? And so it does something. And it's incredibly difficult to really see the nuance of this on digital media. When you see a Mische technique painting in person, you can really see this kind of depth and layering of color in a way that you just cannot see it digitally. So I'm sorry for that. We do the best we can, but it is one of those things. And so I am just kind of going through, like I said, just going through really gently. I have this brush that is the one that I'm applying the glaze with, and then I have a kind of fluffy brush that I, soften it out with if it gets a little too wet or if it gets a little streaky. I definitely don't want any streaks in this. I want it to be kind of as smooth as possible, as soft as possible. Okay, so I did all of that. And now the next day I went in with a much darker brown with a sepia color. And this is I love this sepia. It's, it's this really dark gray brown. And, so this kind of does like the warm tone of the umber, and then kind of this cool tone with this does a really nice thing together. And so I'm using this to kind of go in, make things darker, and also do some of the detail. Now, I have an entire video on glazing bright colors, but glazing darkness is very similar. One of these days, when I do a painting that is darker, I need to do glazing darkness because it is its own beast. But it is very similar to how you glaze bright color, because you don't just go in with darkness. It looks terrible. It doesn't work. You have to layer up darkness with a variety of different colors, even often. And, so when I'm doing shadow, and especially on something so delicate as skin, again, it does not matter what color the skin is that you're painting. The luminosity of skin that you want to maintain throughout your piece is a delicate process and is a nuanced process. So you don't just go in heavy-handed and, just try and put a lot of shadow right away on there. You got to layer that up gently. And so that's what we're doing here. We're just layering up the shadow so that, that beautiful umber stays in some parts. I don't touch it. And then I add this sepia on top of it in other parts where it needs it. And it starts really adding depth, right? You can see how this is taking shape, right? And also it still looks a little funny, right? This whole, you're only adding shadow. You're not adding any highlight yet. That's the next step. But I find it extremely helpful to just focus on just the shadow and just the highlight and just the harmonizing glazes. In this way, it just keeps me on track. It keeps me from getting confused and kind of, lets me look at the painting as a whole in this kind of really nice way. And, I'm kind of going in with that sepia here with some of those details. Faces always look utterly bizarre until you put eyebrows and eyelashes on them. So part of the reason this has been looking very strange is because my face, this is my face, and my mother's face does not have eyebrows or eyelashes. And so even, without putting your finger on it, you can really tell when a face doesn't have that on there yet. It's just your mind is like, what is going on? So I'm just kind of gently, just like the first part, I've got a fuzzy brush and I've got my glaze brush, and just really making sure I am that I'm getting the shadow and the different glazes of shadow to really combine nicely. So I'm just basically doing what I just spent in a slower part of the video doing with the sepia. I'm doing the same thing. This is my mother. I'm doing the same thing on my mom's face. And, so the lighting in this painting, I am having, the lighting on us, me and her, is very, kind of almost spotlight from above. So some of these shadows, like hair under the jaw, neck, some of these shadows are pretty intense. And I wanted that kind of nice, bright overhead light, like some sort of celestial light shining down from above, because we are both goddesses in this painting. So, gotta have the godlike celestial light on there. So same thing with the sepia, going in with some details, making sure that it is both defined where it needs to be, but also blended really nicely where it needs to be. And, you can see how it's starting to come together. Now, day 3. On day 3, I am using Payne's Gray. So I'm not black. I probably will, we'll see. So every once in a while I do actually use black for stuff. Sometimes the Payne's Gray is enough, but we'll see. And so I'm kind of going in, doing more details on the eye. This really is just to get the, again, because I have such a high contrast light in this, I want those shadows to have that contrast. You have to have the darkness. So honestly, like some of these shadows are going to get darker, but I'm not going to do that until I do the highlight. And then the harmonizing glazes, part of that harmonizing glaze will be in like more shadow, but with different colors. So probably some purples and maybe some blues in some of those harmonizing glazes. So like I said, again, this is just your first shadow layer that you're building in on your skin. And so I just did that Payne's gray over everything that needed it, you know, where the darkest spots are in my reference photo, and, you know, blending it in so it looks good. When I put the highlight on, I'll probably do a video on that too, just to, you know, have it be kind of a continuous story. But when I put my highlight on, you will be able to see how it really glows. Now, here it is done. The shadow is done. And it really, you know, it's come together. It looks pretty good. And, but it still does look a little awkward, right? Until you put the highlight on, you'll see it's just going to look a little funny. So, but you see how it really kind of grounds the figures, grounds the faces. And, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and see you in the next video.